Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Retail 2020, Enabling a Clear Customer View in a Fragmented Environment. Before we get started, I'd just like to take the chance to remind everyone that this webinar is due to run for roughly 1 hour, in which we will have time for questions at the end. To ask a question, simply use the Questions tab in your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll be collating these and seeking responses at the conclusion of the presentation. If you have any difficulties hearing or seeing the presentation, please ensure you have a strong internet connection and don't be afraid to ask for help via the questions interface. At worst, we will be making a record of this webinar and slides available at the conclusion of today's event. Today's topic will be presented by Stephen Duncan, Product Marketing Manager for Pronto Software. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Campbell. And first of all, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to attend the webinar, taking the time out of your day. Again, as Campbell said, my name is Steve Duncan, and I am the Retail Product Marketing Manager at Pronto Software. And my role really revolves around listening to the market, retailers, and industry experts to gauge future direction for our company. So with that in mind, the goal today really is to break down the elements that make up and support what it really means to this so-called clear customer view, which includes operations that support anything to do with the retail value chain. It's no doubt that with so many channels for customers to purchase goods and services, retailers on all levels are looking for ways to better understand, personalize, and ultimately make brand advocates out of our customer bases. Now, in saying that, there's no magic pill or solution for this, and every retailer has different needs that I speak to. But what is a common theme, though, is many of the elements that make up the framework for enablement. So our journey today really revolves around data, and many of the industry experts, including Gartner, have been saying that data will play a significant role in the growth of business, and that will be one of the #1 challenges for CIOs in the coming years. I guess what's an interesting phrase I've heard recently from a lot of experts is that data is the new oil. It's really a bold statement to our industry, I guess, to sit up and listen to what's happening. All right, let's kick it off. So with today's agenda, first of all, we'll be looking at the vision of data. And really without data and data structure, it's no doubt going to be a challenge for any business to interpret what the market is saying, and more importantly, what our customers are saying to us. This includes the framework for customer segmentation, purchase patterns, anything really to do with omnichannel fulfillment. So what we'll do is we'll start off with a typical vision of data. Sort of when I speak to the industry and speak to retailers, we'll explore some of the importance of data in the industry and what the industry is saying about it. We'll look at some of the data channels that are available. Also, putting a strategy in place is pretty key, and we'll touch on some of those points. Technology and infrastructure, of course, that support these initiatives. And finally, the resources and the personnel that are going to be running some of these initiatives. All right, so first of all, let's have a look at what the data vision might be in a typical business. So speaking to a lot of retailers, they'll say to me, well, you know, I know what I know and I can see what I can see. And there's nothing wrong with that. And typically a lot of that's transactional based. So for example, they'll see their sales, they'll see where they sold the products, they'll also see when they sold the products. Some of the things that might be a little less visible might be things like customer information or who they sold it to and why they sold it to them. They may not have a CRM system in place or a loyalty program. Social aspects obviously are growing more and more, and having those visible against the rest of our data can be a challenge. And even things like localized events, which I'll touch on a little bit later, that can also be a challenge as well. All right, so let's say we took a novel trip into our data optometrist. And we'll see in a minute that Telstra actually has a new role. It's called a data scientist. Well, when we're exposed to the bigger picture, it might even be more blurred than that. But if we receive an update on our vision, the picture might start to clear itself up. And ultimately what we're looking for is the who, the what, the why, the where, and the how. And hopefully the how come, because that really plays and tells the story of the bigger picture in our journey forward. All right, let's move on to the importance of data and what the industry is saying. Let's start off with Gartner. Gartner obviously is a very reputable source, and they've actually coined this phrase, this big data revolution. And as says there, they see big data as really is set to transform the way companies manage their relationships with their customers. We'll touch a little bit on big data in a minute, but also put it in perspective for the average business, especially in Australia. But what we're talking about here is really the three elements of data, the three V's. And again, we'll touch on this later. Gartner's also drawing a correlation between the revenue and real-time information that's available for salespeople, especially on the sales floor. I mean, 17% for any retailer is quite considerable in this day. I mean, it can be a clear differentiator in the market, remembering that the various touch points have different enablers. Online digital commerce obviously leaves a digital footprint, but things like bricks and mortar might be a little less transparent, so that will be the challenge. Certainly there's an increase in the amount of social media, social noise in the market. I guess some of this might be directed at us. So the question really is, are we aware of it? Can we harvest it? Are we in control of it? And really, how do we manage it? Are we proactive or are we reactive to what's happening in the marketplace? So many of you might be aware of what happened a number of years ago with one of our major Australian retailers. They really had no social or omni-channel strategy, and in fact they were quite proud to state that they didn't. And the size really overshadowed the appreciation of the customer voice, but of course that changed literally over one weekend when some negative sentiment came across the social media platforms. And they instantly had to go into damage control, sort of showing other companies what could happen if that was the case, and literally doing 100% backflip, which means that really no business is immune to what people are saying. You see a slide here, see a diagram here. This is their diagram, and this is their proactive plan to say that any touch point that they have, that the customer has to be taken into account and be first whenever they push forward any initiatives. Telstra is another interesting example. They've just made a major statement, and if you look at their tagline, it's how we connect. It's never meant more than it does now. They've just recently put forward and committed $60 million to a project, and this is where they put forward this chief data scientist. So really out of here, the point is sort of what's highlighted at the bottom, is that they're looking at marketing as being a new enabler and really taking the promotions down to the individual level, which means they're going to be highly analyzing all their data. All right, so that's really the importance of data. If we look at some of the data channels, now many of you may already be aware of many of these, but talking to many retailers, really the difficulty there is just putting strategies in place for these, and then from there, infrastructure is really to manage them. So no doubt over the last couple of years, mobility has been a major focus. So again, what I like to do is just pick up a lot of statistics that I found in the industry and who I've been speaking to as well to share those with people. We can see that obviously mobility is a big step forward for most businesses, including retailers, and we can see that the figures there, for example, 100 minutes per day spent on a mobile device is aggregated throughout the whole day, which means that we can reach out to our customers at any time. It means that mobility is really changing the face of how we interact, and the information that's gathered from mobility is quite key to the way we do business with customers now. So some of the channels and some of the challenges for retailers are going to be things like NFC or near-field communications, enabling that platform as it moves into the marketplace. Interestingly enough, just sharing a story out of the US is using SMS as an incentive through coupons, instant coupons and so forth, and really enabling and talking to people on that mobile level is pretty important. Showrooming is obviously a major factor these days, and again, some companies in the States actually promote this. They like to see people actually using their phones in store and try to give them as much information as they can. All right, supporting the last slide, I guess, is the social media interaction. I really don't need to say a lot about this other than the fact that it's a major initiative forward, and it should be for most businesses to really be listening out and reaching to people anytime, anywhere through the various platforms that work for them. I mean, Google, for example, looks at searches as brands, so they really relate to searches as brands more than they do about just who sells it. So a brand message is very strong. People speaking to brands as much, if not more, than their friends. I guess the question for us is, are we listening and taking note of that? I love this slide for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is a couple of years old now, but it speaks really of the positive trending that's been happening, and these things are still happening in the industry through Facebook, Twitter, and some of the other social media networks. What I do like about this, though, is what it says about retail blogs, that it rates them very highly. I think what that's saying is that customers really appreciate and respond positively to thought leadership, especially if it's coming from us. If we're speaking directly to our customers and giving them or arming them with the information they need, they're more likely to then return that response back to us. Again, it's all really about building brand advocates with what we know. Other data channels, I guess, how far can you go with tapping into things like personal technology? Some of you may be aware of what happened in Nordstrom's a number of months ago. They were actually acquiring the MAC address of mobile phones as they entered the store. Now, they were primarily doing this for merchandising, assortment planning, and staffing. Honestly, they were trying to do what would suit them best and service the customer. They had big budgets. They stood to reap potential rewards from that. There was also big risks as well, because as soon as this got out into the media, they had quite a bit of a backlash. And what they had to do is backflip on this, and it didn't translate that well, so they had to instantly discontinue the program. And then the management had to say, own up to say what they were actually doing in store with the shopping habits and so forth. People didn't sort of see it as that way. They thought it was more intrusive. So if they would have shared that message with people up front, it may have been a slightly different story. So it really was a high value proposition for them, but people saw more benefit for the retailer than they did for themselves. All right, this is where we'll touch just quickly on big data. I don't want to spend a lot of time. It's not a big data discussion, but I think it's important from a practical level to understand the direction of big data and what it really means in everyday business. So as probably most of you know, it's broken down into three parts, which is the volume, so the amount of data, the variety of data, where the data is coming from, and it's often unstructured data, which we'll touch on a little bit, and then the velocity of data, or the speed of data. So that's how they sort of break it down into common terms. I've also put this this image from IBM, which I kind of like. I think they've routed it really well. They've sent the message of some of the components of big data and where it sort of comes from. And they break it down to just really say it's about the access and being able to analyze data regardless of how fast it's moving, the type of data and where it resides. So again, it's really the message about the amount of data, the type of data, and the speed of data, and then putting that into perspective with our own businesses. And I guess to take that a little bit further, big data really is a constantly moving target. So as early as early 2013, it was thought that big data ranged from a few dozen terabytes to a few petabytes, or even a single exabyte in a single data set. So examples of a couple of petabytes would be something like Walmart or eBay, which we're talking about millions of transactions over a day. Certainly to put that in perspective with the average Australian retailer, most of our sites are running in there at about 100 gig. So nowhere near what you would actually coin as big data. But that's really not the point, because the point of big data is actually the information that's being gathered and what we're doing with the information. Obviously, looking at the speed of information is key too, but from a localized perspective, data is not always easy to capture in a big data format. So an example of that would be things like localized feedback and intelligence. So I'm speaking to a lot of retailers. These are things that oftentimes can't always be put into computer sense, and they have to really be adopted on the floor and then brought back into the reporting structure. So again, local intelligence, floor feedback, and I'll touch on that a little bit later with a company in the States, Macy's, that does it quite well. Localized weather, for example, and if an event's happening or the weather's changing over a period of time, we might not be able to report on that 6 months or 8 months later to then do some forecasting for the future to see what the results were, because we didn't know why there was either a dip or an increase in sales. Localized events, speaking to a lot of retailers, things like events that happen in their centers, or if there's a concert or a sporting event happen, it can really change the sales patterns that are happening in the store. And again, if we're not capturing those, then they might not be able to be reportable down the track. So that really leads us into having a strategy in place to capture big data and to manage big data, and really what that means. So really any design needs to be supported by that strategy, and it needs to be fit for purpose for the business. All stakeholders really need to be a part of this and buy into this. Budgets, resources, and technology are enablers, but it's people who run those things ultimately. So what I've done is I've broken down this into into 4 stages, or 4 elements, which are each reliant and supporting each other. So starting off with the define. It's important to define the data to be captured. So many clients like to work backwards with this. The acquire of the data. Acquiring the data is often the challenge. Data structures, consistency, and tables, as we'll say. Analyzing or having the tools to interpret that data. And finally, distributing that data evenly and effectively across the business, giving to the stakeholders to make it effective. All right, just a couple of messages out of the industry, again, to strengthen this. Again, I'll just read this one out, that customers do expect their favorite retailers to know them, their preferences, and respond with that single face. And without that single view of customers and their behaviors, I guess it does become difficult to implement a successful omni-channel strategy. And inventory as well, inventory management and replenishment. Again, how do we consolidate our data to gain customer behaviors? Well, 43% of retailers believe they should be doing that. They believe it also gain better insights into cross-channel behaviors. And I guess I don't need to tell most of you that these are some of the competencies that are rating high for customers. Things like the being able to buy into store and return into another store. What's happening overseas at the moment, I think will probably be moving into Australia in the next year or two, is the buying online and picking up in store will happen more and more, whether it's through drive-throughs and so forth. And then being able to buy online and return into store. So some of these channels are yet to be analyzed and implemented across all businesses. So we can see that 75% of retailers in a survey have found that their omnichannel fulfillment is very important. But again, 42% saw that one of the key inhibitors really is that inventory and order management is not integrated throughout the whole channel. So I think that's one of the key messages to take away, is those integration points really need to be taken into place so that the product is in the right place at the right time to make the sale. So a large percentage of retailers that surveyed also ranked below underdeveloped in some of these areas, especially in the customer experience. And certainly it says here 81% reported that they were underdeveloped in the capabilities of tailoring assortments, pricing, and shopping experience for customers across the channels. So we're talking about personalization across the channels. So this is the define. It's really to define what are the elements that need to be put into place. And really, many projects are put into place that are unrealistic. They're either too big, they're undermanaged, or there's not enough buy-in across the business. So some of the key questions there is, what is really meaningful for the business, and what is achievable? Again, talking to retailers, they do want to put plans into place, but some of these are unachievable, even if they had the budget in place to do it. And how is the data going to be positioned, and who's going to be seeing it, for example? Again, some of the key issues there is that data is difficult to obtain. The data is oftentimes unstructured, and that's part of the problem. And what they say with big data is just getting unstructured data into place with the rest of the data set. And there's no project or defined budget. So this brings us to one of our biggest problems, and what we call, what I like to call the silos of excellence. So as we see, there's more emerging customer interaction points popping up all the time, and obviously we want to take advantage of these as well. So our omnichannel strategies are really looking to support these. One of the challenges, again, is trying to avoid having these silos of excellence and making sure that they all work in tandem with each other, or at least each is aware um, of the other best of breed product if that's the direction that we're going. So each really has its own format and trigger of information, and as it starts to become fragmented, really teams are then starting to work on individual projects, and they become difficult to interpret for a lot of businesses. So this really leads us to the acquiring of the data, and I guess the end result here is if there's no strategy, then lack of clean data and direction is going to be the result of that. So, where is the data coming from and who's responsible for channeling the data? And seeing if the data is also fragmented. So again, the key issues there is there's no business plan in place that's looking across each of these silos, and IT staff oftentimes don't have a direction or drive to solve some of these problems. And again, the data is unformatted. So certainly technology and infrastructure can be a great enabler. And in speaking to most businesses, they really are striving for strategic planning as being one of their main goals. But some of the key issues there are operational inefficiencies, and this is where putting plans in place, I guess, to have a clean vision of that data so that they can report on it is part of the strategic planning. But operational efficiencies are really holding them back, and stakeholders end up becoming more focused on low-level events and issues and not able to format these plans. So again, coming back to that previous statistic, 42% of retailers are saying one of their top inhibitors is inventory and order management. It's not integrated, and neither is it accessible over all channels. And certainly companies in Australia are trying their best to mitigate this and improve some of their channels. For example, Myer has recently released a statement saying that they have now moved into dedicated distribution center to support their digital channels. I mean, they're realizing the importance, or appreciating the importance, if you like, of their omni-channel initiatives and importance, and they want to work towards improving those operational efficiencies, so they're seen by the public as doing so. So many retailers will have a couple of questions, and they really want to know, what drives demand, for example, and how quickly can they adjust assortments, forecast, and plans, even in season if they need to. How can they move product around and make changes in season to capitalize on sales? Well, a couple of the answers there, I guess, leading into it is one area is with business intelligence analytics and forecasting. They can base it on real-time events such as customer trends, improving purchase patterns and allocations. And also with integrated operations, they can better service their customers, improve those levels, and really reduce stockouts and overstock. I just want to quickly touch on this one example, which is Macy's, and many of you might be familiar with Macy's. As you can probably tell by my accent, I grew up in the US, but I've been here for about 25 years. And I'm lucky to go back every couple of years to visit family and friends. I love Macy's and I love going there. I also like speaking to their associates. They probably think I'm a bit strange because I ask them about their business and the way they conduct business. But Macy's has really been finding new ways to reach out to their customers through what they call their My Macy's program. Now, the technicalities of that program are no different than, say, what Woolies and Coles are trying to do, and gather as much information as possible to then bring it back, aggregate it, and then feed it back out to the business to be able to have marketing initiatives and so forth. The big difference with Macy's, though, it's more about actually generating floor feedback to feed into the program. What they're trying to do is bolster up their analytics and improve their operational structures, really by increasing things like visibility to their staff, whether it's just through handheld devices and so forth. But they're asking questions to customers to then feed that back analytically so they can understand the trigger points. that way, I guess what they can do is that they see patterns evolving with customer activity, then they can work with those customer patterns and know what the best results might be for those customers. Just an experience that I had that I'll share with you is I went back recently and I did buy some clothes from Macy's as I was speaking to them, and the associate there said to me, would you like to join our My Macy's program? And I said, well, unfortunately, I don't live here, and I don't think it'd be applicable to me because I live in Australia. And she said to me, look, that's not a problem. She said, what we'll do is we'll set up a temporary card for you. We'll save you 15%. And I tell you what, because you've come from overseas, we'd like to incentivize you to buy this, this, and this. I asked her, I said, well, why did you go down that path? I'm just curious. And she said, well, we already know this happens, and we want you to spend money now, obviously. So we like to incentivize you now before you either go home or go to another store. So why not take advantage of that now? And I thought that was actually quite a paradigm shift, the way they viewed me as a customer and took my needs into account and made the sale specifically based on my requirements. Really what we're talking about ultimately is creating and managing one unified source of data, really breaking down the silos and streamlining operations. Anything that can improve or streamline the retail value chain has to pay dividends in the long term. All right, finally, the importance of the resources and personnel. I guess across our initiatives, we need to involve our people at all levels. And if we look at something like I mentioned with Macy's, the buy-in from the staff is very important. Are staff just salespeople? Are they there to sell, take money, make recommendations, and that's about it? Or are they associates and professionals in the business? Do they see themselves as part of the business? So certainly looking at resources, there's a couple of ways we could go. There's integration partners, there's ERP solutions that do a lot of this, and they're already integrated. Certainly BI, an integrated BI platform is one of the avenues that a lot of businesses are looking at these days. Being able to provide that BI instantly to their associates, whether it's through mobile devices, real-time information, and then finally really tapping into our people, having our people be one of our main resources to feed into the business. Now, what Gartner is really saying about IT priorities in 2014, again, we mentioned that data is the new oil, and aligning those key elements into the one ecosystem, they sort of see that as key in the next year. They've mentioned here that business intelligence analytics will be the #1 priority for CIOs next year. And that'd be followed by mobile technology, ERP applications, infrastructure, data center, and cloud as well. Really, business intelligence can enable some of those real-time decisions. So again, BI is one of the areas that can help provide that instant insight into the business. It's one of the channels that businesses can take to improve, and I think there'll be a lot of talk about BI in the next year. Taking classic value analysis such as time and place we mentioned before with customer sentiment, determine if there's any high impact issues, growth opportunities, customer pushback, or localized fashion trends is another one. I speak to some businesses and they're very smart in being able to understand what's happening locally and then being able to share that with their customers, so they really create that I guess they create that imagery for customers when they come into the store. So that falls in with our analyzing of data. So again, the questions we really need to ask them with their business is, what is the data model? Where and how is the data warehoused? And do we have structured tables? Do they match? Are there dimensions within those tables and that make up those groups of tables and the joins of those tables as well? Some of the key issues really there, again, can we work from decisions back? How far in the past, and really what triggers a decision in our business? What's the key information that's going to trigger a decision to then put something in place, ultimately for better strategic planning? And again, what would Christmas look like in 2014 if we can increase our revenue productivity by 17%? by enabling or empowering our associates. So again, distributing the data is very key. Questions here really are, who's responsible? What is not easily captured? Finding out what's not easily captured so we can push that back through. And how is it entered, and where is it most relevant, and who is it most relevant to? So again, the key issues there is the message been articulated to our staff and to our people? Do they have buy-in? Have they taken responsibility? Can we honestly give more than we take, or what do we expect from our people? So these next three slides are really just some of what I see as some of those key touch points to take into consideration with any data strategy. The question here really is are these analyzed prior to projects or along with projects or after projects? Because I do speak to a lot of retailers and they say, gosh, I didn't think about this, this, and this in the business before I put a project forward. So those are some of the functional challenges, things like forecasting, merchandising allocations. Replenishment is a key one. How quickly can we replenish? Delivery, obviously, multiple delivery platforms, especially with online. Are we able to get product out to people in a timely basis, timely manner? And service, can we service our customers after the fact? This follows through with some of our go-to-market capabilities. So things like our branding, our brand position, pricing is pretty key. Promotions, how are these perceived across the channels? Do we have different pricing online, which may be the way you want to go? For other businesses, it might not be. Marketing, how are we marketing this out to people? What's the message that we're sending out? The selling component, do people know in store what's happening online, for example? And customer service, how quickly can we help people with customer service and help their needs? And finally, as an umbrella, it's the overall business capabilities. So what is the growth strategy, and do they match all the capabilities that we're looking to put into place through expansion? I talked to a number of retailers that want to look at franchising, but the challenge for them is that their systems really don't support franchising, and they probably didn't ask that early enough in the piece when they want to move into that model of the system's going to be able to scale along with that. Innovation, what channels are they moving into? Will the systems be able to support that? And then financial management, and finally employee management. Are the systems in place there? So ultimately, we can provide that, that story to the customer because those things are already in place for our business, or thought through for our business, should I say? All right. So just to summarize, basically what we're talking about again, the define, acquire, analyze, and distribute is really achieving actionable insights through that's supposed to be harnessing, information, making more informed decisions, better outcomes, and ultimately creating value for the business, and more importantly for our customers and our employees as well. All right, I'd like to thank you for your time and hope you received some insight, ideas, or concepts that you can take back to your business.
Well, thank you for that,
Thanks,
Stephen. I think that was a very insightful presentation there and well presented. I'm sure everyone will agree. We've had a few questions come through, so if you're comfortable, I'll probably start with the stickier questions to begin with and get those out of the way.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. In particular, we have Greg asking about the relationship between Pronto and Cognos, making reporting difficult through multiple channels due to restrictive Cognos licensing issues into basically restricting to Pronto's ERP only. This might be a little bit specific and a little bit technical, but I'm wondering if you've got any advice for Greg to be able to pull data into Cognos from elsewhere, or is there not a solution here?
Yeah, that's an excellent question actually, and probably one that might be good for us to, of course, take offline with him. We can probably get that information, and I can put one of the consultants, in place to manage his particular need. But it is something that Pronto as a company has been looking at, to be able to bring in some unstructured data through some tables. Part of the issue there, I think, is in some of the licensing issues with Cognos. But I believe there's some work being done at the moment, and I can't quote that directly, that we're going to be able to overcome that shortly.
Sure, sure. A sticky issue when there is legal requirements involved, as always. Greg asked a subsidiary question as well, with data in multiple data sets. Do you have any tips for him to being able to aggregate that data easily? Is there any shortcuts there, or is it always going to be a painful problem?
Yeah, look, it is a technical hurdle. We have released something in the latest version through utilizing some of our own table structure to then read multiple tables, multiple data sets. So again, I can put that forward. So that's for our latest release, is a point release, which is 7.10.1. We've just released a product that is going to assist customers with making snapshots on multiple databases and aggregating information.
This may relate to Mitesh's question as well. Mitesh asks, how might we handle the differences in databases? For example, relational databases like SQL and real-time databases such as social media databases.
Yeah, I mean that is a difficult one. I think technically that'll be different for different companies and different structures. Some companies like Hadoop are able to capture data and structure that data so it aligns with other tables in the system. But again, I think a lot of those become a bit bespoke. It's difficult. I think that all I can say from my perspective is just that people are aware that there is going to be some differentiations potentially there, and that the joins might be a bit difficult, and that is always going to be the challenge. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
There's probably no answer. Yeah.
I guess it's probably
Sorry,
a
Campbell.
matter as well of conferring, liaising very closely with your solution provider and various solution providers as well in these cases to try and find a solution where possible.
What I will add to that, Campbell, because it's an excellent question, is that, and again, this is not really promoting Pronto as such, but we do have a team that specialize in areas like that. So they need to take into account where people will have different data sets and different channels, and how they're going to link those together. And for many people, that involves a unique project and technical team to manage.
Mitesh follows up, and again, you may not have a direct answer on this one, but Mitesh follows up by asking, do you see a time frame before this becomes less of a bespoke situation and more holistic products come on the market?
It's hard because I think everybody in their own, every company in their own competencies believe that their solution is structured as it should be, and that's so we're not perfect, and I would say other companies probably have their beliefs in the way that they structure their data. Certainly, what I see happening, and this is sort of a little bit of a tangent to the question, but I think I'll sort of bring it full circle in a minute, is that a lot of companies like us now are moving towards an API or web services structure. That really helps to then, I guess, cross-pollinate systems, and then from there, I guess the next challenge then is to get those table structures aligned so that information is no longer fragmented, and then it can be reported on a more holistic basis through either a BI tool or whatever. So I think we're all sort of moving towards more of an open structure as a business, as providers, should I say.
Fantastic. And in lieu of any further questions, I'd say to the audience remaining to feel free to jump in with further questions, but I have one last remaining for now. The question is championing the SMBs, and do you have any specific tips and hints for smaller retailers that might not have access to enterprise solutions? Is a unified customer view something that they can aspire to, or do you think this is maybe too large a hurdle?
Absolutely not. And I think that's an excellent question and point. And I think that's where what I wanted to try to do is bring this down more to that level as well. I certainly think I mentioned before, a lot of localized intelligence, whether or not you're using a full BI tool. And obviously online is a bit different. If you have an online solution, obviously you're capturing a digital footprint. But I don't think, in speaking to a lot of retailers, and this is not a personal sort of attack on retailers in general. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Is that I don't think they look to empower their staff to actually grab information and then feed that back somehow to whatever reporting they do, even if it's Excel. Even if they have some little triggers on their system that say, tell me what the weather is today. Tell me if there's parking spaces out there. Is the parking lot full? Is there any construction happening? Localized events? What information there that they can gather that's really grassroots, that honestly most large systems, whether they be BI monitoring systems or Hadoop, probably don't capture anyway. There's probably no direct feed that's necessarily coming to those. And that information is classic. It's all about how you ask the customer the questions and then how you feed that back. And then when you go into meetings saying, these are the things that are happening. We're running out of this stock. Customers are talking about these kind of jeans, or, all of a sudden they want this kind of television, or, this sort of stuff. I mean, that information really all of us can do at any level, and then feedback through our reporting is saying that's why sales have been low, or that's why we're doing this. And it's all really about how you ask the question. Some people are very uncomfortable with that, but there's other ones out there, other people out there that really embrace that customer experience, and they're quite happy to engage with the customer, and then it makes it look like a conversation, not a 20 questions I'm going to put now into my CRM and categorize you accordingly. I mean, I think yeah, that's not necessarily the case. I hope that helps. Hope that answered the question.
No, it sounds fantastic, Steve. We haven't had any further questions come through, so I think here is as good a point to leave it as we're going to get. What I'd say to everyone is to remind them again that we have recorded this webinar. Slides and a recording will be made available to you hopefully later today, if not tomorrow at latest. However, if there's any questions, feel free to email myself, campbell@mediapad.com.au. Other than that, I'd like to thank Stephen and thank you all for attending today.
Thank you, Campbell.